Hello and welcome to the Fit News Podcast. I'm your host, Jen Shaver, and joining me today is Dennis Dunphy of Stick Mobility. Dennis was born in Seoul, South Korea, and feels extremely lucky and fortunate to have been adopted by a loving family when he was just 3 years old. His formative years were spent in Buffalo, New York, where he first became interested in fitness. He soon became passionate about helping people move better, team sports, travel, and of course, eating great food. He moved to San Jose, California in 1997 to begin a new chapter of his life. What better place to feed his passions than the San Francisco Bay Area? Dennis's first endeavor in his professional career and in the fitness world began in 1999 at a 24-hour fitness. It didn't take him too long to quickly realize that he needed to break out of the corporate gym setting and started his own business, Diamond Physique. He is going on 17 years of doing something that he absolutely loves. His greatest reward comes from the gratification he receives from helping other people improve both physically and mentally. He helps people enjoy a better quality of life. There is no better reward. His journey has led to an ever-increasing knowledge of human body and how the body's systems work in unison. Stick Mobility is a result of that journey. Neil and Dennis are co-founders, creators, and they are proud to bring you a system that will revolutionize your life. Stick Mobility is passionate about enhancing movement for all. Their journey began with a mission to educate trainers, coaches, and professionals worldwide, certifying thousands with their renowned training stick. Today, their range of products, educational resources, and digital content empowers everyone, from the elite athlete to individuals, striving to be their best selves to unlock their full movement potential with Stick Mobility. Dennis, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, Jen, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm excited to chat about Stick Mobility, your product, and I know you have many others you can chat about too, but before we get into that, I think we need to kind of clear up some confusion regarding mobility, right? Because it is a term that is thrown around so much out there, and people might have different perceptions on what mobility is. So let's go over what is it actually and what is it not?
Okay. Mobility, simply put, is the ability to move from
Mhm.
your ability to get from point A to point B. Um, Most people, unfortunately, when they think mobility, most of the things that we hear is, "Oh, I need to become more flexible."
Yes.
And if flexibility is the ability to bend without breaking, simply put, right? It, and it's a component of mobility. It's an aspect of it. But mobility requires flexibility and motor control. So you've got to acquire the skill set to acquire the movement, and that takes practice,
Right.
especially with movements that you're not used to. It's like learning how to play a musical instrument. We know what it is, we know what it sounds like, but if you've never practiced it, no, I can't sit down and play the piano because I've never taken the time to get practice it and get coaching for it, right?
Right.
So through practice, I'll get better at it, right? And
Mhm.
mobility is the same thing. We know, okay, we want to acquire you a skill set of movement.
Mhm.
At first, you may find limitations. You're not coordinated at it. Through practice and coaching, you become better at it, and then hopefully you get to the point where the specific movement we're looking for, or posture, becomes an involuntary skill set that you can just do, and you don't have to think about it.
Mhm.
But strength is a very big component of mobility. You have to have strength and movement. And when you get to your end range positions, that's really where you need to become stronger or have strength, because we know that as you take something and you stretch it out and you lengthen it, it adds more stress. And
Mhm.
so that's where we want to make sure that you have strength in length.
Okay, perfect. And so, so often you will hear somebody say, "Oh, I'm doing my stretches every day," right?
Yes, all
So
the time.
it's important that they understand that that is not mobility, correct?
Yes.
Mhm.
Most people do static stretching, right?
Right.
They go into a position or a posture and they hold it.
Hmm.
Um, there's certain aspects of that where we're okay, passive does work.
Hmm.
It takes a lot of time though, because we see the way the human structure changes and molds over years
Hmm.
to somebody's postural habits,
Hmm.
where static stretching is less time efficient, so to speak. So we tell people, look, add some isometrics to your end range positions or your stretches.
Yeah.
And that changes the entire ball game. The
Mhm.
feedback system, it completely changes.
Yeah.
Now you're asking tissues that you're trying to increase range of motion through to now express force.
Hmm.
And when people feel that, they're like, "Whoa, that's vastly different."
Hmm. Yeah. So let's just say there's somebody new to this. What would be a great example for them in terms of a movement that would improve their mobility?
So let's take thoracic rotation, for example, right?
Hmm.
You'll see a lot of people, they'll just do these windmill rotations through the torso.
Hmm.
Uh, if we see that, we'll say, hey, let's grab a stick. And
Hmm.
now let's set the stick off to your side. Let's reach across, grab the stick with the opposite hand, and we'll say, "Hey, do you feel that rotation of the rib cage?" And people are like, "Oh, I really feel that." And for a lot of people, just reaching across and grabbing the stick, sometimes that's enough strength to get them to kind of cramp up, right?
Mm.
So that feedback really increases. And then we'll say, okay, if you can get over there successfully now, exhale and push the stick away from you further into rotation. And that's where you start to really require those oblique slings and the tissues supporting the rib cage to really engage to get you to push the stick.
Hmm. Hmm. It's interesting you just mentioned that one because when you talk about that one makes me think of a real world application in terms of putting on your seatbelt, right?
Yes, 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 very much so. And so we take a look at movements that people typically are going to have to do throughout the day.
Right.
And we say, okay, let's make those movements better. Let's get you a better skill set of those.
Hmm.
So those become less of a struggle. I've had clients come be referred to me simply for the fact that they have trouble getting in and out of their car.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then we say, okay, what are you lacking that's giving you issues getting in and out of the car? Okay, well, your hips are a little stiff.
Hmm.
Your foot function's a little off. Thoracic rotation may not be where it needs to be. So we say, okay, let's work on improving those things. And as we improve those things, then all of a sudden, your ability to do simply simple things as like getting in and out of your car become easier.
Right. Right. Because we know that mobility affects and has an impact on, daily living, the tasks of daily living.
Very much so. I tell people all the time, look, somebody's mobility is their own,
Hmm.
what they need and what they're looking for, right?
Hmm.
So for a lot of people, they're like, oh, I want my overhead range of motion to be really optimal and great. Fantastic. And if that's you, that's fantastic. But for somebody that's 70 and may have a history of stiff rib cage, shoulders are locked up, and they go to the store and they have trouble reaching their hand barely above their head. If that person can increase their range of motion by another, say, 6 to 8 inches,
Yeah.
that's a game changer for that specific person,
Right.
right? And
Right.
others will say, well, that's not optimal range, that's not maximal range of motion, but for that individual, that's a life-changing range of motion.
Right. Right. And I think that's what the important message here is that it's very individual
Hmm.
and it
Yes,
doesn't have to
very
be
true.
what the textbook says, right? And you don't have to be
Exactly.
70 to start practicing your mobility. In fact, you can set yourself up for success prior to 70.
Oh, very much. And we try to encourage people to start focusing on that as soon as possible.
Mhm.
Even if you only take, and we tell people, look, start with like 10 minutes a day.
Right.
Most of us always can find at least a 10-minute gap in our day to dedicate to yourself And I think that's the first thing we have to get through to people. We don't want to make this a drag. We don't want to make this like, oh, I have
Right.
to do this.
Yeah.
This is invest in yourself for
Right.
the long term, right? For longevity. And
Right.
so just take 10 minutes, grab a stick and do some movements
Right.
and free the body up a little bit.
Mhm.
Start to remove those restrictions.
Mhm.
And that can be a big game changer for most people.
Right. Right. And I've always found, when people say, "Oh, I don't have time to do the stretching or the mobility work or whatever,"
Mhm.
I say, "Well, do you watch TV?
Exactly.
Because how many commercial breaks are there while you're
Yes,
watching TV, right?"
correct. If you watch a half-hour show, 10 minutes of that is commercials.
Right.
And the TV doesn't move.
Yeah.
It's right there in front of you. You're not going to miss anything. So it's the perfect time. Myself at home, I will oftentimes be on the floor doing work as I'm watching TV.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as you said, even if you are an extremely busy individual, number one, if you are an extremely busy individual, you're probably spending a lot of time sitting behind a
Hmm.
computer, which means
Hmm.
you are the person that most likely needs the mobility work.
Very true. Very true. And a lot of people, a lot of super people, busy people, business professionals are often business traveling.
Yeah.
That takes a huge toll on the human body.
Hmm.
So that's something where I've been referred a lot of people that are often frequent business travelers,
Hmm.
and we all know the issues that they tend to deal with: sciatica, tight hamstrings, hip flexors are whack,
Right.
not working as well, and then you get the upper back pain, mid back pain, low back pain. So
Hmm.
as fun as traveling may be for work, and people are like, oh, that sounds like wonderful. After a while, it does tend to take a toll on you.
Yeah, yeah, it's very taxing on the body. And then we also have, people spending more time on their computers, people spending more time
Mhm.
on their cell phones. And now we have that forward head posture, so poor
Posture, yep.
posture. So tell us, how does mobility help with posture?
So once again, we can look at the person's habits,
Hmm.
movement habits. We
Hmm.
we get an assessment, we analyze, we ask questions, we say, hey, what is your typical day, and what are we talking about as far as time frame wise, what
Hmm.
you're doing in each of these things, and then we look at, okay, what are they really good at?
Hmm.
As someone who's forward head and folded over is very good at flexion,
Yeah.
so we don't want to give them more flexion. They already own that. They're really good at it. So then we give them the stick, and then we want to get them into postures that are going to amplify extension.
Hmm.
And then from there, we want to use isometrics with the stick to help them open up that extension of the spine.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a long time. I mean, if someone's in their 50s and they've been 30 plus years of starting to mold themselves into that flexion,
Hmm.
then we say, hey, look, let's temper expectations. This isn't going to happen overnight, but with consistent work, we can start to rechange and remold that body structure, that resting posture position.
Right, right. And I think, that's a very important point to bring up, that it's not going to happen overnight. And in a society where we are used to our deliveries happening in 2 minutes,
Hmm.
we do need to understand that we've spent how much time, whether it's in poor posture and it has affected our upper body or our lower body from sitting too much, that these changes are going to take some time to, you know, to happen and to have an effect. But down the road, it's only going to help us.
Exactly. And you'll feel benefits typically right away, right?
Yeah,
So but people are gonna be like, oh, I feel better.
yeah,
Great. Now tap into that memory of what you just felt and how you felt better. And that should kind of be internal motivator to want to do it a little bit more frequently,
right.
right? So I think that for us, that's the experiential experience that our clients get. People that haven't used the stick before.
Yeah,
We give them the stick, we give them like 4 or 5 movements, and they're like, oh, that feels amazing.
yeah,
Cool. Now your brain's telling you that feels great. So tap into that, reacquire that feeling. And that should be your internal motivator to say, okay, I can spend my 5-10 minutes a day doing these
Mhm.
drills because it does feel good. It does feel great. And then with that consistency is where we're going to start to ultimately see changes and feel changes down the road.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us, let's go into a little bit more detail about stick mobility. And let's start from the very beginning of, how it started, and then
Okay.
all about it. What do we do with it?
Uh,
How do we get it? All that good stuff.
so Neil and I, we used to do some stick stretching with a chiropractor over in Santa Cruz, California.
Okay.
So Dr. Arthur Fagenholtz, wonderful human being, and he used to use rattan sticks to show his patients how to do some stretches.
Yeah.
And so Neil and I were like, well, we need to have strength for mobility. And for us being movement coaches and strength and conditioning coaches, we looked and said, well, there's some really good strength aspects that we're missing out on with these movements. So we told him, we said, we would like to create our own brand. And he said, yeah, go right ahead and do that. So when we first started, we started using with rattan sticks when we first started in 2015
Okay.
was when we spent about a year developing the system and how we're to use the sticks and how we apply isometrics into the system. So the system is set up in three things. We want to first of all go joint by joint mobilization to make sure that each individual joint knows what it should do, how the feet and ankles should move, how
Yeah.
the hips should move, and all the way upstream.
Right. Right.
Then
Because
we
if
said,
one is
okay,
off, especially if we're talking about
exactly.
the ankle can throw everything else off. And so if we have one part, as you said, how everything works in unison, right?
Everything in the body is connected.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what we try to teach our clients is
Yeah.
everything is connected. We've heard the songs as kids, right?
And shoulders, knees, and toes.
The toes, right? Shin bone is connected to the ankle bone, right? So we've all heard that, right?
Yeah.
But we don't really think about what that really means.
Yeah.
And so it's unfortunate that we're not in touch and in tune with ourselves as much as we should be
Right.
in many respects, right? So we want clients to understand that look, the one movement at one point affects the entire system, not a little less more distally and a little bit more proximal, right? The
Hmm.
closer it is to that impact. But yes, it has that chain effect.
Hmm.
So once we get joints to understand, oh, this is how I'm supposed to move, right?
Yep.
And then then we can assess. We can say, okay, the right ankle, it doesn't have frontal plane motion like your left ankle has. Okay, maybe that explains why you may be having problems upstream on the right leg.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do that. Then our second phase is we go joint. We want strength training, which is most of our program, which we don't market because isometrics you can't market. It's really hard, right? So so we'll use the stick with clients to really build strength through the entire system. And then we finish off with our stretches.
Uh-huh.
And that's where on social media, that's what most people are seeing is those stretches.
Hmm.
And so the stretching part is actually only about 10-15% of our system. The
Hmm.
rest of it is mostly joint by joint mobilizations and the isometric strength training.
Hmm.
So that's the system we set up. And then we launched in 2015. And we really just expected to we were just trying to bring some information out to people. We wanted to, throw it out there, maybe drum up some more business for us locally. And
Hmm.
then before you knew it, organically, the community started to gravitate to it. We started getting queries from around the world, which I thought was really
Wow.
I was like, wow, this is incredible, right?
Yeah.
And our first real big impact, honestly, was when an NFL strength and conditioning coach reached out to us
Ooh.
about 8 months after we launched,
Okay.
and we had some. Neil has some clients who are in the aeronautics industry, and
Ooh.
and they knew we were having problems with the sticks. Right,
Yeah.
rattan is a natural stick, but it's multi-dimensional as far as how it grows. Right,
Okay.
so it's hard to find consistency as
Hmm.
far as the circumference of the sticks and things like that. So we ended up going to PVC after that. But the
Oh,
PVC that you can find at your local hardware store, it's really thin, so it's not
mhm.
really designed for what we do. So they said, hey, we can design you a stick that's going to be a much stronger, more durable finished product. And
Oh,
that's what you see today. That's
mhm,
where that came from.
mhm.
And so our very first course that we did was with that NFL team and their staff. So I thought, and that was Chip Morton, who's still a very good friend of ours. And that's where it took off. And that's where, Neil and I were like, wow, we are onto something here. We're
Right,
onto something that a lot of people, see value in. And
right,
so that's where the journey's gone. And from there, we've branched out to having international distributors. We've had the honor of having thousands of coaches and clinicians and clients. We've
right.
had some doctors, we've had some trainers who have asked, "Hey, how is your education? Is it digestible enough for me to send a patient or a client?" We say yes. We want the content to be uh, good for the high level trainer or
Mhm.
clinician, but yet still digestible to a fitness person who just wants to feel better,
Right,
move better.
right.
And so we try to make it so that it covers both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. And I think that that's what makes your product so great is the fact that it is rooted in the educational piece
Mhm.
of everything.
Yes.
And it's not just like, oh, here's this piece of equipment, go try it. It's rooted in education and wanting to inform the person who is using it, whether you said that is the elite athlete, the doctor, or an individual who just wants to feel better and move
Yep.
better.
Mhm.
And I think when you devise, something on the basis of the education of it, it does make it something that A, everybody wants, and B, that, everybody can learn from.
Yeah, we use five principles, right?
Mhm,
Number one, leverage and stability. That's the actual mechanical advantage that the stick gives you. So we try to teach people, look, physics is always at play, gravity is always at play on your body. And so that's kind of something that we want to get people to understand when you're moving an object, how is physics affecting you, right? So let's
mhm,
just get a little basic understanding of, levers and stresses and angles. And that even that alone can make a big impact on how a person interacts with the objects in their life
mhm.
because it's not something they really thought about before, right?
Right.
And so we try to give a little basic crash course on mass, volume, and all these little fun little things, right? But without making it too, complicated for them. And so then we use feedback, right? So we say, hey, your body needs feedback, whether that's visual, whether that's kinesthetic, that's what it's looking for, right?
Mhm,
Then we use irradiation, which is basically how much rate of effort are you using for a specific move? And
mhm.
what is your intention? Why on a one movement or with one outcome do we only want you to use about 30% of your max effort versus 100% of your max effort, right?
Mhm.
So when you're doing stretching, we want you to do that. It's work. We still want you to do that isometric component, but we
Right.
don't need you to be cranking the dial up to 10 on that. It's because we're trying to get you to relax,
Yep.
lengthen,
Mhm.
down regulate typically. So we want you down at about a 30% intensity. We want it a little bit lower. We can use the same movements for dynamic warm up before a workout or a sport or a game or anything like that, or an
Mhm.
activity. If that's the case, then we can say, okay, now let's ramp it up to about 50, 60% intensity because you're about to go actually do something
Right.
right after this, right? And then after that, we have the isometrics that we always teach people. And then all those first four components, they're all aimed at our final principle, which is coordination. And that's what we're after. We need to improve that.
Right. Right. Well, particularly as we age.
Yes, very much so, right? Neuroplasticity, a big component of that is challenging yourself by learning new physical activities.
Mhm, mhm.
So that's why with aging population, I always encourage clients go find a new hobby. Go
Yeah.
find something different that you haven't done before. It's
Mhm.
going to require you not only mentally, but physically to learn a new skill set.
Yeah.
You know, um, go out and learn dancing. You know,
Right.
things like that, right? Uh, Go out and try a little indoor rock climbing. You know, things that are gonna kind of push you out of your comfort zone
Hmm.
and get you to physically challenge yourself just a little bit more.
Right. Right. Because we know obviously our risk of falls goes up.
Very true, right? And so
Yeah.
we tend to go, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. So
Hmm.
the nice thing is with the sticks, we can add that stability, added stability that somebody needs
Hmm.
while we do some single leg training, while we do some work like that, while
Right.
to help the individual increase their skill set in that,
Hmm.
and then hopefully give them the confidence to go move, take those new skills and try something else.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So important, to think about all of these things
Mhm.
as you're aging, because if you fail to prepare, right?
Well, I think unfortunately in I don't know if it's so much. I think it tends to be more in Western society than it is in Eastern society, where
Yeah.
as we age, we use the excuse of getting old as just that. It's an excuse,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I think unfortunately, too many people as they age, they just start waving the white flag.
Hmm.
And for me, I think that I don't like seeing that because look, it's why don't give up, right?
Right. Right.
I mean, we all know that eventually things are going to, go gradually downhill, but it's at what rate is
Yes.
that downhill going to happen? Are
Hmm.
you literally going to plummet off a cliff, or is there that gradual slope, right?
Right. Right.
And so for that's one of the, longevity and one of the things that I try to stress with clients is you can help control that rate of decline, and let's
Right.
make it as gradual as we possibly can.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, let's work on controlling the things that we do control, right?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And so, at the age of 80, most people retire at 65, 70, and they haven't enjoyed life, right?
Right.
And then they get to the retirement age, and now physically they may be really limited and
Yes.
people go, well, I want to travel. But now all of a sudden some people are, having to deal with physical issues that
Mhm.
limit their ability to travel.
Yep.
So I say, hey, let's try to change those factors for you. Let's try to remove some barriers. That way, you can go do what you want to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Which I really think that's what fitness is all about, is preparing you to be able to do what you want to do and for the tasks of daily living.
Yes, right. And that really, yeah, same thing. For fitness, for me, that is the thing. It's
Yeah.
to prepare you, make you more resilient.
Yep.
Do what you're doing at the age of 35. Would you like to still be able to do that relatively well at the age of 70? Great.
Right.
Well, let's aim for that. Let's work on that, right?
Yeah.
And the aesthetics is going to come with that,
Yeah.
right? If you move well and you feel great, well, you're going to tend to do a lot more things. Well,
Yeah.
the byproduct of that is aesthetically, you're going to be looking great,
Right.
right? Whereas most of the training world that we see is just, oh, let's lose that 10 pounds, let's lose that
Yeah.
20 pounds, which we know can just, yeah,
Yeah.
yo-yo up and
Yeah.
roller coaster up and down, right?
Right.
Where with mobility, that's one of the one things where when you stay consistent at it,
Yeah.
it's going to be there for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Like,
it is something that is needed in your daily life, no matter
yes.
if you're 35, 55, or 95. And the
Hmm.
better mobility you have, the better your quality of life.
Yeah, and I tell people, look, I move better now at 52 than I
Mhm.
did at 32,
Yeah.
just because I've changed the way I've trained. I've
Yeah.
changed my mindset on how, what my focus is.
Hmm.
And so it is possible.
Right.
And, with clients that I've been training for years, same thing. We've kind of seen a reversal in their trajectory.
Yes.
So once again, it's getting them to buy into it, first of
Yeah.
all. And then when they feel it and then they start to see the results, then once again, they continue with that consistency and we start to change that trajectory.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found it funny that you mentioned consistency before when talking about the rattan, because it just goes to show that consistency in anything is important, right?
Ex
It always comes down to consistency.
It really does. And that's I tell client, and I've used that word much more now in the last 3 years than I
Yeah.
did previously.
Yeah.
From before that it was longevity, which is a great word,
Hmm.
but it doesn't hit home as much as consistency does.
Yeah.
Because people know that. They're like, okay, consistency. Yeah, it's habits.
Yeah.
And so if you can develop the habit of investing in yourself for, like I said, just to start at 10 minutes,
Right.
because every time most people when they think working out or any time of
Right.
stuff, it's 1 hour, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm
That's
like,
what I'm always saying.
and I'm always like, when did this get set? Like,
Yeah, I'll
was
tell you
there a meet
when they came out with the classes that were 1 hour,
1 hour, right?
right?
It's like there was like a meeting that I missed. And
Yeah,
in
you
this
and I
and
both.
in this meeting they said everything must be 1 hour. Okay. So I try to get that out of people's heads where look, people, I don't have an hour. I didn't say you need an hour. Let's start
Right.
with 10 minutes. Because if you do 10 minutes in the morning and then all of a sudden you had a 15-minute window in the afternoon,
Hmm.
you're almost at a half hour.
Yeah.
And we know that the government
Right.
recommendations are significantly less than that, right?
Hmm.
3 hour, half hour, 3 times a week of moderate
Hmm.
exercise. And you're like, well, that's the bare
Yeah.
minimum, like the bare minimum, right? Oh my goodness. It's funny because people used to always ask me, how many times a day do you work? How many times a week do you work out? And I'd be like, I work out like 6 days a week. And they're like,
Yeah.
wow, that's a lot. But it's not.
No.
It's less than 2% of your overall week.
Right. Right.
Like
And how
that's
many times do you brush your teeth? I mean,
right. So
when it
it's
becomes a part of your life, you don't really think about, I have to get this done, and it has to be an hour, and it
yeah,
has to. Yeah.
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 It's and so we tell people, look, it's the cumulative buildup.
Yep.
The cumulative buildup is what got you to the point that you're at now.
Yeah.
Now let's change that. And
Yeah.
if we bring in something else and then we accumulate, we build that up. Now that is hopefully going to reverse
Yep.
what the other buildup was.
Right. Right. Again, taking time, because it took a lot of time to get where you're currently at. So it's going to take some time to reverse that as well.
Yeah, and that for us as professionals is one of our biggest struggles that we have to deal with, right?
Right. Right.
Is tempering expectations.
Yeah.
And it really is. And it's not to be negative Nelly, but it's just, hey,
No.
look, this isn't a get fix, quick fix, instantaneous thing.
Right.
You know, like I said, people will feel better. They may feel
Hmm.
improvements right away, but just because you feel better doesn't mean everything's like all set and copacetic already, right?
Right. And you just stop and you go back to doing what you were doing. Yeah.
Which is what most people tend to do. I
Yeah.
feel great. Okay, I'll
Right.
stop that.
Right.
Well,
Right. Which
no,
I will admit that's what I used to do when I was in physical therapy, which is why I always ended up back in physical therapy when I was marathoning. So I'm guilty too, but not anymore.
yeah, yeah, because we let our guard down,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we feel great. We let our
Yeah.
guard down. We go, I'm back to 100%, and we say, okay, well now that consistency is going to be a prehab.
Yeah.
Let's be proactive, not reactive in that
Yep.
case, right?
Yeah.
So I was trying to get people to say, look, stay consistent, and now you're being proactive, not reactive, not waiting
Hmm.
for something to pop up.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Dennis, is there anything else about stick mobility that you want our listeners to know about on how it can improve their lives?
I think it's a wonderful tool that has amazing versatility.
Hmm.
The stick is compatible with whatever modality you like to use. So for people with yoga, it adds a little bit more strength component.
Mm, wow.
Pilates instructors love using it with the reformer combination with the reformer.
Mhm.
Uh, for people that like to do bodybuilding, great. Do your classic gym bodybuilding movements, but
Mhm.
use a stick and open up some tissue lines, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're a bodybuilder, you're looking to enhance your physical structure, right? Your
Hmm.
muscle tissue. Well, let's get some blood flow.
Yeah.
Let's open up some avenues. Let's remove restrictions, because the more blood muscles get, the quicker they heal, the quicker they recover, right? And so for that aspect, we say, hey, grab a stick, stick with your traditional workouts, but just do some movements with the stick and you're going to feel massively better, right?
Hmm.
And so for athletes, the stick can help them refine and fine tune some gaps that they may have in their movement.
Hmm.
So their trainers or their clinicians may say, "Hey, you're having a leak in a little energy here, or have a little gap here." So we can use a stick and use isometrics at that specific range of motion
Hmm.
to then reacquire that skill set. So that removes that gap from point A to point B that they may be experiencing.
Okay, good. And then how about just for the midlife mom who is just getting started in her fitness journey?
Yeah, grab a stick, start to play around with it. We have a ton of content on our YouTube channel. So
Hmm.
if you say, hey, my upper back is really stiff, okay, well, let me go on the YouTube channel and put in up back exercises or back movements, right? And you'll see the videos that pop up that we will give you some movements to help free up, unlock the upper back.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a tension thing through the front. So maybe you need to open up the front a little bit more to take more stress off the upper back. That can be
Hmm.
an issue too. So it's for us, the stick is a very non-intimidating tool
Hmm.
for people to use.
Right.
That's going to be a wonderful experience from a strength standpoint and a movement standpoint. That once a lot of people get through and understand how we use the stick, like I said, the expression on their face when you see them and they go into those movements and they feel it and they're like,
Hmm.
oh, they're like, yeah, now you know what we're talking about as far as all the components that we just discussed.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. And they can find more information. The website is stickmobility.com.
Yes, stickmobility.com. Like I said, we have a ton of content on our YouTube channel.
Hmm.
We are on all the social media platforms under Stick Mobility.
Hmm.
So Instagram is probably our biggest platform,
Okay.
social media wise. Um, but yeah, the YouTube channel has been a huge avenue for us. I think we have 45-minute workouts
Oh, wow.
that we started. So when the pandemic hit, about 2-3 weeks into it, I was like, look, let's do some free work. Let's stream some free workouts.
Yeah.
45 minutes. People are stuck at home, uh, maybe going wacky. You know, they're out of their normal day-to-day stuff. Let's give them stuff that's going to benefit them that they can
Yeah.
do just in their house, right? And so that started there. We ran that for over 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So we did 3 workouts a week,
Yeah.
and then we uploaded those to our YouTube channel. So there are a ton of 45-minute workouts that you can go all the way back to the very first one that I did. And then we started to branch out as we went further into it.
Yeah.
So we have different coaches, Ray, Kelly, uh, Debbie, and so they each have their own little style.
Hmm.
And then Ray did some ones where he started combining other tools with the sticks. And so then we also have specific movements in our library also. So there's a nice
Okay.
combination of everything. And then we have some daily flows, stuff
Okay.
that you can do for like 15 minutes
Hmm.
that's just going to help you feel great.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, that's
Yeah.
great. All right. Well, be sure to check those out. And remember that the links for stickmobility.com and all of their social media links will be in the show notes. So be sure to check those out along with the discount code for Stick Mobility. Using the discount code FITNEWS, you can receive a discount on your stick. So thank you, Dennis, for your time today. It was great to chat with you.
Chad, it was a pleasure. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me on.
Of course. And thank you for listening to the Fit News podcast.